Hi, and welcome to this webinar. We are Christian and Douglas, and we are thrilled that you have, first of all, signed up, but also that you're here now with us, spending 30 minutes of your precious time on climate. Douglas and I, due to the limited time available, we're not going to go into long presentations of ourselves. We have worked on sustainability for collectively, what is it, around 50 years? And if you would like to know more about us, please feel free to reach out or connect on LinkedIn. We've put together this webinar on scope 1, 2, 3. What are we talking about? Measuring, reporting greenhouse gas emissions, and also how you can turn your business travel net zero. So we are around 20 people watching this webinar. So due to the small crowd, we encourage you to ask questions meanwhile, and you do that by writing them in the chat. And when you write the question, please mention who you're asking, Douglas or myself. Yeah, so basically what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna share my screen, and Doug, you'll just ask next slide when you want me to move on.
Perfect.
So some technical stuff to be sorted, and we are good to go.
Yeah. Okay. So, Christian, thank you for the quick introduction, and to jump right in as you suggested. We've had or at least I've had the pleasure of almost 2 decades of dealing with sustainability, in particular in greenhouse gas emissions and abatement, working with both governments and companies in addressing this issue and reporting on their emissions, but also the reductions of emissions. Though governments have a tendency to be and to make GHG accounting, which is greenhouse gas accounting, and the reductions more complicated, companies very much like to have lower levels of complication, especially small and medium-sized companies, which is what we want to talk about a little bit later in this webinar. But there is at least one truth that you can't really get rid of, no matter the size of the company, and whether you're a government or a company in general, or any other type of organization, is that greenhouse gas emissions are very activity specific, insofar that it's the things that we do as people and companies, and in some cases the things we don't do, that causes greenhouse gas emissions. And two decades ago, there was an organization called the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which still is around, or the GHG Protocol, which came up with a simple method to really categorize greenhouse gas emissions for companies. And this method, despite all the scientific research and activities that have been done for 20 years in climate change, this method has actually withstood the test of time and is still very much the foundation for corporate greenhouse gas emissions and reporting today. And that's what we see on the slide here. The GHG protocol basically divided greenhouse gas emissions into 3 scopes, as seen in this diagram. And what's important with these scopes is that the first one, which is in the middle, focuses on what we call the direct greenhouse gas emissions of activities of the company, which includes burning fossil fuels at a factory and for other energy purposes, and including the use of your own vehicles within your company. So, for example, DHL for their delivery vehicles would have this under scope 1. Scope 2 focuses on indirect greenhouse gas emissions from purchasing energy from third parties. So this would be, for example, when you purchase electricity or heat from a utility. Scope 3 focuses on indirect emissions from both upstream activities of the companies which are supplying products through your supply chains, and downstream activities for the users of your company's goods. which includes transport and disposal and so on and so forth. So that's what you see on the left and the right side here. So taking these into account, we always recommend that companies start with what is close to them and what can be easily controlled. And this is the fuels that they use, their own transport, the use of electricity, heating, cooling, water, their business travel, which is where Goodwings comes in, and waste. And then we start with measuring the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions in the past based on the activity information that the company would have, and maybe look into what may happen in the future as the company possibly grows or expands into different locations. So the first thing to address here is where the GHG emissions can be reduced, for example, in a company. And that's let's say the motivating elements, and these usually relate to reducing energy use or purchasing green energy, such as wind power or solar. And then what you can't reduce, then we recommend being offset by GHG offsets, where in this case really should only be done where it's not viable to reduce greenhouse gas emissions yourself because of either cost or you don't have the technology, or it's just simply completely impractical relating to your business. And this could be done by buying carbon credits or carbon removals, which we'll discuss a little bit later from Goodwings. So Christian, can you change the slide? Thank you. So the first question that all companies ask is, what will it take to measure our greenhouse gas emissions in terms of information, what activities we need to do, and more importantly, the resources we need to put into it. At the same time, we also need to keep in mind about the brand of the company and the reputation of the company. And that's also to not provoke bad press, but also be accused of greenwashing, which does happen in few cases. The trick to do this is to focus on three things. The first is integrity, the control, and the resources that you use. So if we look at this diagram, we've tried to sort of map this out. And in the middle of the diagram, you'll see the reporting of the company, or the company's own greenhouse gas emissions. And this requires the least amount of resource use. It has the highest level of integrity because the data comes directly from your company, and to some cases, third-party suppliers. And it requires the least amount of resource use. But if we go further downstream or upstream, so downstream would be the suppliers that you have that are providing the inputs to what you do. That would be upstream, and then downstream is your customers and consumers and the use of your products. But as you go both further downstream and upstream, you lose control of the activity. You also lose some of the integrity of the information that you can gain and get. And more importantly, the resources required to track this information and convert it into GHG reporting significantly increases. So this is why we, again, focus on the middle part to start with for most companies. And then finally, notice that when we look at the downstream actions, which you see on your right side, and the upstream actions, which you see on your left side, that there is actually a difference in the amount of resource use, the loss of control, and the integrity. Basically, the upstream activities have a little bit less resource use, where the downstream actually has quite a lot, and you lose a lot of control on the downstream side. So again, as you move both upstream and downstream, that's where accounting for greenhouse gas emissions becomes more complicated. And typically, it's usually larger companies that tend to focus on those. So Christian, please take to the next slide. Thanks. So how do we do this? How do we ensure integrity in the system? And basically, we recommend companies do this by focusing on international approaches and methodologies. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol, who I mentioned earlier, has one general framework and approach where they can offer methodologies for certain types of companies. You can also tailor-make methodologies to your company based on science and existing methods that are used. There's also quite a number of reliable calculation tools, but unfortunately, most of these are broad, so they may not be location specific. So for example, we're based in Denmark, where the general broad-based tools aren't as effective because we have a lot of renewable energy depending on which municipality our company is based in. So therefore, we need to tailor-make our accounting system a little bit better. Then after you've done this sort of accounting level, the crunching the numbers, then you can actually use international reporting frameworks, which are well respected. Two of them are called the CDP and the GRI. And these reporting frameworks allow for basically standards on how a company can report and are respected by the public and your suppliers and your customers. So through that, then you create your company greenhouse gas emissions report, and this is the one I show actually comes from Siemens. And the report gives your emissions to what extent you choose to do it, whether it's only in the middle, as we showed earlier, or whether you wish to go downstream or upstream. And again, we recommend using an international framework in order to do that. So that's a really 5-minute spiel or less on greenhouse gas reporting. I'll hand it over to Christian now to describe how Goodwings helps facilitate this.
Let me just see if you can just continue from here. Thanks, Doc. As Douglas mentioned, some emissions can be avoided, some cannot. In the case of business travel, there aren't really many places to go if you would like to travel zero emission. We're waiting for aviation to be driven by either batteries or hydrogen or a third yet unknown technology. But as we wait, we at Goodwings cannot live with the fact that this industry is accountable for almost 10% of all man-made emissions. I'm not specifically talking about aviation, but travel and tourism as a whole. So at Goodwings, what do? Well, we try to deal with the fact that travel is emitting. Obviously, COVID has put a stop to that, but as most people recognize, travel will bounce back, and some of us fear that it's going to explode once the world reopens, and the climate effect of that is going to be quite significant. So we are focusing on enabling travelers, specifically businesses, to travel net zero. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we calculate how much you emit with your travels, and then we basically pay to remove that for you. And I'll show you in more details how we do it. So basically, we are a hotel booking platform, like hotels.com or Expedia. But when you book your hotels with us, we can accurately measure how much CO2 is being emitted with your total travels. Not only the hotel that you're booking with us, but your flights too, your transfers, even your meals. So the only small change that a company needs to make is to decide to book its hotels on Goodwings, which is also part of the reason that we have been so successful since we launched our new net zero travel service in January earlier this year. As I mentioned, on the surface, we're a hotel booking platform. We offer access to the same hotels, roughly 1 million hotels around the world, as you're used to getting access to on the major known brands. We have the same comparable rates and terms and conditions and all that. But the major difference is that we take the climate threat, very serious. So instead of doing what our industry typically does, which is spending 75% of its revenues on advertising, we funnel that money to projects removing carbon. So we basically spend the money we sell, the money we get on selling hotels, on removing our clients' emissions, which means that you will get the same hotels, same price, but also paid for by Goodwings, you will be able to travel net zero. We do it when you book the hotel, because we basically have 2 data points on you. We can see from your IP address that this person is sitting in, let's say, Copenhagen, booking a hotel in Madrid. So if we know how you're getting to the hotel, either by airplane, train, bus, car, we can measure the amount of emissions from your main method of transportation. We also know how many days you're going to stay at the hotel. We always calculate 3 meals a day. And then we also ask you, as part of our carbon calculator on the website, your transfers to and from airports. So all that information basically enables us to calculate your total footprint from every business trip. And we then go and remove that. So basically, talking about removals, there are 2 ways of doing that. Either the tech-driven solutions, the technological carbon removal solutions, such as direct air capture, where you literally suck CO2 out of the atmosphere and thereby remove it from the atmosphere, and then you store it underground. This solution is something that we have looked into, continue to look into. At the moment, it's not really viable. It's simply too expensive. It's around, I believe, $1,000 to $1,200 per ton removed. So to give you an idea, flying economy to New York and back, one person is emitting roughly 2 to 2.5 tons. So you're not going to spend $2,000 to $3,000 on removing your emissions on such a trip through this technology, which is why both the UN, the OECD, and the EU encourages nature-based carbon removal. So this is what we do. We follow their recommendations, and we invest in reforestation projects, only the verified ones, where someone actually comes out every 2 years documenting that the trees are here, they're growing, and the forest has now absorbed yet another 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 tons of CO2. What it means that it's verified, it means that every time the verifying organization has been to the forest area and documented that another 400,000 tons of CO2 has now been absorbed and is now stored in the forest, it's then registered in Vera. And Vera is one of the largest registries in the world for these GHG projects, typically forestry projects, but also other types of projects. And when we remove the emissions for our clients, we go into Vera and we register it in our client's name, which basically enables total transparency for our clients to see that Goodwings is actually doing what we are pledging. So basically, turning online travel into one of the largest forces for carbon removal, we can change the impact of this industry. We cannot, within the next 15, 20, perhaps 25 years, have the pleasure of traveling without emitting CO2, but we can take responsibility for the emissions that we cannot avoid, either when we're traveling with our family and friends or for business. So we want to make that choice easy. We want to enable businesses to save time traveling net zero, to save money traveling net zero. Because basically, I had a talk the other day with a company who pre-COVID was emitting around 1,000 tons yearly on its business travel. They would probably be spending $20,000 to $30,000 yearly on if they had to pay for removing the carbon themselves through such a VCS verified tree planting project. They don't have to. We basically spend our entire sales commission from the hotel bookings on that for them. So they get their emissions removed and verified. They get an annual CO2 certificate issued in their company's name that documents that they've had 1,000 tons of emissions, but Goodwings has removed that same amount, basically enabling them to have had net zero impact. They get access to all the travel emissions data in a downloadable form as a spreadsheet. which basically saves them quite a lot of time on their Scope 3 reporting. And they also get a cool seal for the website where they can inspire other companies to travel net zero. So basically, as we spend all our money on all our sales commission on removing carbon, our main source of income are the subscription payments from companies. So all companies can travel net zero. They don't have to pay for it. We have a free starter plan. But depending on the level of information you need for your climate reporting, you can upgrade to these packages that you see on the screen. And this, just to clear that out, the price here is not per user, but for the entire company per month. So this is, this should be at least an affordable cost for companies of all sizes. Since this year is going to be a bit more affected by COVID than what we had previously hoped for and expected, we are launching our net zero travel with a travel back better offer, which means that if you sign your company up before July 1st, so within the next 2 months roughly, you'll get all of this year for free, the rest of 2021 for free. And why are we doing that? Why are we giving it away for free? Well, because we want to incentivize business leaders and companies to make that decision on how they're going to restart their travel in a post-pandemic world. And since no one really knows when are we going to use the service, in other words, when are we traveling again? Is it going to be in June or in September? We're taking that risk away by saying, well, you don't need to pay for it this year, but you commit to traveling net zero with us in 2022 as well. So this basically concludes the webinar as such. Let me just see if I can find my way back to you guys. Get out of screen sharing mode. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you learned a few things about what is scope 1, 2, 3, upstream, downstream, indirect, direct, about how to measure, but also how to report on your greenhouse gas emissions, and ultimately how to turn your business travel net zero, easy and affordable. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.